All right, here we go. Left off last time, and Jack had just bought a bunch of neckties, and Praiseworthy thought it was a good idea, but everyone else was laughing at him. The next morning, Praiseworthy and Jack helped Pitchpine Billy dig a coyote hole. Once we hit bedrock, there's no telling the riches down there, the miner declared. The Spangles keep working and sifting through the ground, earthquakes and all. It may take 'em 10,001 years to reach bedrock, but that stops 'em. By late afternoon, the big hole was deeper than Praiseworthy's head. They rigged up a rope and lifted out dirt by the bucketsful. There were men all along the diggings, coyoting for gold, and some of the shafts were as deep as wells. Jack took his turns at the bottom of the hole, filling buckets that were emptied into the long tom. The long tom was a wooden sluice box set in the stream. Rushing water washed the dirt along the trough, and the bits of gold were trapped in iron rifles along the bottom. So you can kind of see what a long tom is here. Let's see if you can kind of see it. It's right here. And so the water goes in there, and they wash out the dirt, and the gold gets stuck in there. Praiseworthy kept silent about the neckties. Even by the end of the next day, there was no rush to buy them, as he had predicted. But he remained unconcerned. Jack wondered if Praiseworthy had merely been trying to spare his feelings after the ridiculous purchase he made. He was glad to forget it and said no more. The following morning, a delegation of 3 men appeared on Pitchpine Billy's claim. Jack recognized Mr. Jones T. Fletcher at once. The undertaker had brought 2 Hangtown merchants with him. They came looking for Praiseworthy, who was at the bottom of the coyote hole. Jack and Pitchpine Billy hauled him out on a rope, and Praiseworthy looked as if he had been dipped in dust. It clung to his eyelashes as he blinked. "If bedrock's any deeper," he said to Pitchpine Billy, "we'll be digging for gold in China." "Bullwhip," said the undertaker, "we've got to uphold the fair name of Hangtown." "What's that?" "We've just been delivered a challenge." Praiseworthy began beating the dirt out of his slouch hat. "Is that so?" "Yep. A fellow over at Grizzly Flats has heard about you. He says he can whip you." Jack looked up. Praiseworthy hardly blinked an eye. He merely continued knocking the dust out of his hat. "Is that so?" he said. "Yep, of course. He don't know B from a bull's foot to make a statement like that. He ain't exactly bright, although I understand he can write his own name if you give him time enough. But he is a regular big fella, the mountain ox, they call him. Well, how about it?" "It doesn't sound like a fair match," said Praiseworthy. The undertaker nodded. "He does have you on height and weight and reach and general meanness, I suppose." "That's not what I meant," said Praiseworthy. "It wouldn't be fair to him." The 3 gentlemen from Hangtown responded with a blank look. "How's that?" Even Jack was startled by Praiseworthy's declaration. The mountain ox sounded enormous. Praiseworthy wouldn't have a chance. Had he begun to believe his own reputation? "From what you tell me, gentlemen," said Praiseworthy, "the man can barely read and write. He'll be at a decided disadvantage." Pitchpine Billy pulled his hat down over his ears. "Bullwhip, will you tell me what readin' and writin' has got to do with a bare-knuckle fightin' match?" "I suppose that remains to be seen." "Then you'll fight him?" The undertaker grinned. "Not by choice," said Praiseworthy, "but if the fair name of Hangtown is at stake, I suppose I must." The delegation smiled. "How about next Tuesday?" "Impossible. By next Tuesday we'll have our burro and grubstake and be far away prospecting. My partner and I will have a fortune to make, and time is running out. We'll be returning this way by the middle of August at the very latest. You can plan the match for the 15th, sir." The 3 gentlemen from Hangtown nodded and departed. Jack gazed at Praiseworthy as if a complete stranger had been hiding through the years under the elegant manner of a butler. He was enchanted. But Pitchpine Billy whipped off his hat and jumped on it. "Bullwhip," he snorted, "you've gone and lost your reason. Before the 15th day of the next month shows up, you better make out your last will and testament." Jack had just lowered himself into the coyote hole when a sudden excitement spread through the diggings, and he pulled himself out again. There was a shout of voices back and forth across the stream, from claim to claim. "Old Quartz Jackson's back, and he's brought his new missus with him." Men dropped their shovels and gold pans and abandoned their long toms. Miners crawled out of coyote holes. "What's that?" "Him and the lady is putting up at the hotel." The excitement even touched Pitchpine Billy. "Boys," he said to Praiseworthy and Jack, "I ain't seen a lady in so long I near forgot what they look like." Praiseworthy rested his arms on the handle of his shovel and grinned. He gave Jack a nod. "This is the day we've been waiting for, partner. Watch and see." Pitchpine Billy scowled. "Well, don't just stand there. Look at you both. Dirt sticking out on you like ain't had a bath all year. Why, it's a disgrace. I'm ashamed of you. You heard what they said. There's a lady in town." Within 5 minutes, miners were everywhere along the stream, scrubbing and shouting and planning to go to town. Pitchpine Billy waded in with his clothes on and kept dumping hatloads of water over his head. Later, shirts and trousers could be seen on every bush, drying out in the mountain heat. There they all are, getting ready. Men stood at mirrors tacked to trees and got out their straight razors. Half a dozen familiar beards disappeared, others were trimmed and shortened. Praiseworthy took his time. When he and Jack emerged from their canvas tent, they were wearing bright green neckties. Pitchpine Billy stood fluffing out his beard. He stopped and he stared. "Help yourself," said Praiseworthy. "That is, if it's all right with my partner." "It's fine with me," said Jack. Pitchpine Billy grinned. "Don't mind if I do." The neckties were so bright they could be seen across the river. Soon the miners who had laughed at Jack the night of the auction were swarming about the bushel basket. "I'll give you a pinch of dust for one of them neckties, Jamocha Jack." "I'll give you 2 pinches." Pitchpine Billy was laughing. "Don't fight, boys. Just get in line there. Looks like Jamocha Jack has cornered the necktie market. He caught you sleeping, didn't he? Just hold your pouches open and I'll pinch out the gold, since I got the biggest thumbs in the diggins." Praiseworthy stood idly by with his foot on a stump and lit a long 9 cigar. Within 20 minutes the basket was empty. Every necktie was gone. Pitchpine Billy pulled the strings on Jack's buckskin pouch and handed it over. It was a heavy plummet. Jack weighed it in his hand and tossed the pouch to Praiseworthy. "That ought to get us a burro," he grinned. "And maybe a gun," Praiseworthy said, taking the heft of it. He tossed the pouch back. "Yes, sir. That cheap John had better learn B from a bull's foot to get at the better of Jamocha Jack. Gents, let's get to town." The miners had formed a crowd outside the Empire Hotel, and when Quartz Jackson brought his lady out onto the porch, the miners whipped off their hats as if it were the United States flag they were looking at. "By the great horn spoon," Pitchpine Billy muttered in awe, "a genuine woman." She had sparkling eyes and a smile for everyone. Quartz Jackson wore a vest with a watch chain across it and looked proud enough to burst. "We've freighted up some cut lumber," he said. "The missus and me, we're going to build a cabin, and you boys are always welcome to drop in for tea. Ain't that right, Hannah?" "Hannah," Pitchpine Billy murmured. "Ain't that the prettiest name you ever heard?" Quartz Jackson looked out over the crowd. He recognized Praiseworthy and Jack and gave them a nod. "Step up, boys, and I'll introduce you. Make it fast before you strangle him in them neckties." All right, have a good rest of your day. Next week we'll start with Chapter 14.